If you ignore this, you'll regret it later. It's not to scare you, but because it's something many people miss until it's too late. They're strange, sometimes even misunderstood behaviors that helped someone, especially narcissistic abuse victims, survive the emotional chaos. Let's break down the unusual coping mechanisms narcissistic abuse victims develop. Are you ready for number 1? Hyperproductivity as a distraction. What if your to-do list isn't just about getting things done, but about avoiding what you're afraid to feel? If you've been through narcissistic abuse, staying constantly busy might not be about drive. It could be your brain's sneaky way of coping. You might feel this compulsive need to always be doing something, like cleaning, fixing, planning, organizing, like your life depends on it. And honestly, in a way, it does. It's not because you love productivity, although that's what you tell people. It's because stillness feels unsafe. When things get quiet, the thoughts start creeping in. The self-doubt, the shame, the painful flashbacks. So your mind says, hey, if I can keep moving, I don't have to feel all that. Dr. Janina Fisher, a trauma expert, explains this beautifully. Survivors of trauma often develop behaviors that are aimed not at thriving, but at surviving. Hyperproductivity isn't ambition. It's emotional self-defense in a business suit. And, let's be real, society loves this coping mechanism. You get praised for it. You're the hard worker, the organized one, the person who gets stuff done. But beneath that praise is often a silent scream for rest, peace, and permission to just be. Healing doesn't come from doing more, but from learning to sit in the quiet without crumbling. You're not lazy if you rest. You're brave if you dare to stop. Let's talk about number 2. Developing a fixer complex. What if your urge to fix others is just your way of trying to fix the part of you that never felt good enough? If you've survived narcissistic abuse, you might have developed this desire to fix everything and everyone around you. You take on people's problems, thinking if you just help enough, love enough, or sacrifice enough, maybe things will finally feel safe. This habit usually starts with trying to fix the narcissist, hoping that if you're patient, understanding, or helpful enough, they'll stop hurting you and start loving you. But it doesn't stop there. Suddenly, you're fixing your friend's chaos, tolerating emotionally unavailable partners, and even talking gently to your microwave when it malfunctions. Therapist and author Beverly Engel explains this in her book, The Nice Girl Syndrome. Many victims believe that if they just love harder or try harder, they can heal the brokenness in someone else, but they forget they're bleeding too. The tricky part is that the fixer complex can feel noble. You're the one everyone relies on. You feel needed, even important, but deep down, it's exhausting. You're pouring from a cup that was cracked years ago, and the worst part is, you think being selfless means being safe. You're not responsible for fixing anyone but yourself. Helping is kind, but fixing is a trauma response disguised as love. You don't need to be a mechanic for broken people. Sometimes healing starts when you stop patching up others and finally look inward to say, hey, what about me? Let's move on to number 3. Extreme independence that borders on isolation. You learned the hard way that vulnerability could be turned against you. If you've lived through narcissistic abuse, you probably became the kind of person who says, I'm fine. even when you're not. You might push through exhaustion, suppress your needs, and isolate yourself because needing others started to feel dangerous. In their book, Recovering from Emotionally Immature Parents, Dr. Lindsay Gibson writes, "When people grow up feeling rejected for their needs, they often become overly self-reliant as adults, not out of strength, but fear. So now, even a simple offer of help can feel like a trap, and your brain screams, 'Don't you dare look weak.' The problem is, that kind of extreme independence might protect you, but it also cages you. You start believing that asking for help makes you a burden, so you suffer in silence. Life coach Lisa A. Romano calls this trauma-induced hyper-independence, explaining that when you've been made to feel like your needs are too much, you learn to shrink yourself just to survive. But here's the truth. Strong people do ask for help. Letting someone support you doesn't make you weak. It makes you brave enough to heal. You're not meant to do it alone, and you're not a burden. You're just someone who had to become their own hero for a long time. Now, it's okay to let someone else hold the shield for a while. Now, let's continue to number 4. Refusing to share good news. According to trauma therapist Beverly Engel, victims often develop what's called success guilt. The fear that being proud or joyful will lead to judgment or rejection. When you've lived under the shadow of a narcissist, celebrating anything, even something small like a compliment or a good day, can feel dangerous. You learned that your wins weren't welcome. Maybe they were mocked, ignored, or twisted into some competition. So now, even when something amazing happens, you catch yourself thinking, "Better keep this to myself." You end up shrinking yourself not because you don't want to shine, but because you were trained to believe your light is offensive. This coping mechanism is all about emotional safety. If your joy once triggered someone else's rage, jealousy, or guilt-tripping, your brain now associates celebrating with consequences. So you protect yourself by staying quiet, even if a part of you is screaming to be proud. But here's the truth. Your wins are not threats. They're proof that despite everything, you still rose. And you don't have to apologize for that. You get to celebrate your growth loudly, joyfully, and without shame. You shouldn't miss number 5. Testing people to see if they'll leave. If you've been through narcissistic abuse, you may have unknowingly developed this habit of testing people, like pushing them away, going silent, or picking little fights. It's not because you want them to leave, but because a part of you expects them to. It's like you're setting emotional traps, hoping someone will prove they're different, but also bracing for them to prove they're not. Psychologist Dr. Margaret Paul calls this abandonment repetition, where survivors recreate old wounds to try and control the outcome. Basically, you test love not because you don't want it, but because deep down, you don't believe you're safe enough to trust it. The irony is that even when someone does stay, part of you still doesn't trust it. You might think, they'll leave eventually, they all do. So, you never let your guard fully down. In her book, It's Not You, It's the Narcissist, therapist Shahida Arabi explains, when you've been taught that love is conditional, you grow up emotionally armoring yourself, even when you crave connection. These tests are survival tactics, like emotional smoke alarms, constantly on alert. But the sad part is, they can push away the very people who care. Healing starts When you stop waiting for others to prove themselves and start believing you're worthy of love that doesn't need testing in the first place. Are you still up for number 6? Downplaying their own trauma. Narcissists often gaslight their victims into believing their pain is exaggerated, so they internalize it. If you've been through narcissistic abuse, you might find yourself brushing it off like it was just a bad relationship, or saying things like, "Well, at least they didn't hit me." That's called minimization, and it's a sneaky survival mechanism. You learn to downplay your pain because acknowledging it fully felt dangerous or even disloyal. Dr. Thema Bryant, a psychologist and trauma expert, puts it like this: "You can't heal what you won't admit hurt you." So you keep telling yourself and everyone else that it wasn't that bad, not because it didn't hurt, but because validating your pain feels like opening Pandora's box. However, minimizing your trauma feels like strength at first. You might even wear it like armor, thinking, "I'm tough, I got through it." But minimizing doesn't make the pain disappear. It just tucks it away where it festers quietly. According to Dr. Nicole LePera, author of How to Do the Work, survivors often avoid acknowledging the depth of their trauma because they fear it will consume them. But pretending your emotional wounds are paper cuts only delays the healing. You don't have to downplay your pain to be worthy of peace. Your story matters, especially the parts you've been taught to silence. Let's keep it moving to number 7. Talking to themselves a lot. According to trauma specialist Dr. Janina Fisher, when people are denied the opportunity to express their pain or truth, they find ways to complete the loop internally, even if it's just through imagined dialogue. If you've been through narcissistic abuse, talking to yourself might have become your secret coping tool. You might find yourself replaying old conversations, defending yourself out loud, or saying the things you wish you could have said when it actually mattered. No, you're not losing it. You're trying to find emotional closure in a story that never gave you a proper ending. So whether it's apologizing to the air or telling off someone who's long gone, you're giving your nervous system the release it never got. It might seem odd from the outside, but it's actually a survival strategy. Life coach Mastin Kipp explains it perfectly. The body doesn't care if closure is real or imagined. It just needs to be felt. You were silenced, invalidated, and probably gaslit into believing your feelings didn't matter. So now you talk to yourself, not because you're crazy, but because that's the only safe place you've had to speak freely. And honestly, that's a sign of resilience. You're giving yourself the validation others refuse to offer, and that's powerful. Here comes number 8. Highly in tune with human behavior and emotions. Have you ever walked into a room and instantly knew something's off before anyone even said a word? If that sounds like you, you're not paranoid. You're trained. Victims of narcissistic abuse often develop this almost spooky ability to read people like open books. You can sense tension, pick up on micro-expressions, and catch the slightest shift in someone's voice. But here's the thing, that's not just some cool party trick. It's a survival tool. You learn to scan every little detail to avoid walking into the next emotional ambush. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, author of The Body Keeps the Score, explains that trauma wires your brain to stay alert. Being able to anticipate danger makes it easier to survive. People might even praise you for being so in tune or deeply intuitive, but under the hood, it's hypervigilance in disguise. Therapist Pete Walker, who wrote Complex PTSD, From Surviving to Thriving, puts it bluntly. Survivors develop exquisite sensitivity to the moods of others because their survival once depended on it. You don't just notice things, you monitor them obsessively. You're not trying to connect, you're trying to protect. The emotional sonar isn't a gift, it's a scar that learned how to listen. However, once you realize it, you can start turning that scanner down and choose connection over caution, little by little. Finally, we're down to number 9. Avoiding looking at themselves in the mirror. For victims of narcissistic abuse, the mirror can become a symbol of all the things they were told they were not. If you've ever found yourself avoiding mirrors, it's more than just a simple disinterest in your appearance. It's often tied to a deeper, emotional pain. When narcissists tear down your sense of self-worth, they make you question everything about who you are. Psychologist Dr. Jennifer Freed, in her book Blind to Betrayal, talks about how emotional abuse can warp your perception of yourself so deeply that even looking at your own reflection feels like confronting all the negativity others have projected onto you. You're afraid to face the truth that they convinced you was yours, that you weren't worthy, valuable, or good enough. This self-rejection runs deep, and it's more than skin deep. In fact, this avoidance is a coping mechanism that keeps self-hatred at bay. When you don't look at yourself, you don't have to confront the painful internalized beliefs that the narcissist instilled in you. But here's the good news. This disconnection can heal. The more you look at your reflection through your own eyes, not their lies, the more you start to see the real you, whole, worthy, and lovable. You didn't choose these coping habits. They chose you when things got tough. Maybe they seem odd to others, but they helped you survive when nothing else did. As you move forward in your healing, remember that it's okay to let go of those that no longer serve you and try out new ways to find comfort and peace.